will be Her Worship Flavia Nabakoza from Uganda. Then the second will be Emerging Issues in Youth Justice. Now that session is going to take place in Majestic Hall downstairs. Majestic Hall downstairs. And we have the panelists from Ghana, Lady Justice Rebecca City. I hope I've pronounced that one correctly. Thank you. And the session chair will be Honorable Kamau Jen. Do we have Honorable Kamau Jen? Yes. So that will be in Majestic Hall. So those are the two sessions that we are going to have this morning. And because of time, we need to break out now, and we shall have these sessions until 11, when we'll break off for tea, and then reconvene here at 11:30 for the next session. So the presenters for the session on justice delivery in SGBV cases will take place here. And the panelists are the Honorable Justice Roslyn Nambuye from Kenya, and the Honorable Jacqueline Demelo from Tanzania, who will be presenting a paper by Honorable Justice Agnes Bukuku. I hope I got the name correctly. Yes, thank you. So without any further ado, let us have the session chair, Her Worship Flavia Nabakoza, and let us have the panelists coming while the delegates attending the second, the breakout session, kindly make your way to Majestic Hall. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just being informed now that Majestic Hall is not yet ready. So let us just start out with this session here, the first session on justice delivery in SGBV cases, and we shall see how to manage the second session. So let us have the panelists now. Thank you very much.
identify best practices, and move on. As advised by His Excellency, the President of this great nation, yesterday, that we are still conferencing over the issue because we started on the wrong footing. And he has corrected us that the best way to move forward is that we are one. And this is one of such forums for us to identify where we have gone wrong and how we can now move on. Now, for lack of a paper on research on what is happening around the clock, allow me to center my presentations on what I have encountered on my bench as a judicial officer in Kenya. And we are here working towards a peaceful society and sharing experiences, which I have already said. Now, back home for us, Kenya, we have statistics on the subject. I will not go into that. But I'm glad to pronounce that what we have a litany of legislative frameworks and what has been described as a progressive constitutional provision on implementation of rights for people to enjoy. May I stand here and may I admit and confess that having been born in the rural home, being subjected to traditional customs, I was one of those who believed that actually daughters were chattels for sale, for dowry, until I was corrected. If you Google Rono and Arono, the trial judge was Nambuye, the one speaking here, and the one who denied inheritance rights to the daughters because they were supposed to get married, gave a lion's share to the sons. It was corrected by our Court of Appeal after being exposed to the value systems of IAWJ, the parent. And since then, the association, in conjunction with the support from the judiciary, it has worked very hard, and in fact, it played a very key role in the amendments that we currently have in our progressive constitution of the Kenya Constitution. And as a result of that, Kenya has made strides in putting in place legislative measures to assist in the deliverance of justice to SGPV cases. Allow me just to highlight a few of them. As I have said, we have the Constitution, which now allows the court systems to apply international norms directly. We don't have to wait for legislation. We have the Sexual Offences Act, which had severe punishments in SGPV cases. One of them was life imprisonment. I understand this has been declared unconstitutional. Anyway, something will be done about it. Yeah, we have the sexual offenses rules to actualize those provisions, and we have the penal code. We have the Children's Act for the protection of the children, and then prohibition of FGM, the Protection Against Domestic Violence, the Victim Protection Act, Witness Protection Act, the Judiciary Criminal Procedure Bench Book, which was pioneered by one of us. She's here. The Criminal Procedure Code and the Evidence Act. In the Evidence Act, allow me to stress, we used to have what was called the mandatory cooperation rule. And that procedure denied justice to numerous SGPV victims who came to seek justice. Because if there was no cooperation, the case had to fall by the wayside. But now, and the Kenyan members of the bench who are here of all ranks, you know, they can say, since the removal of that mandatory cooperation rule, we have now made great progress. You believe a child and you render justice to that child. May I allow me for a short time to share an experience whereby way back when I was a magistrate, I handled one case where a 2 to 3 year old child had been defiled. And in the court, we didn't have the procedures that we currently have now, shielding the victim. So the accused person used to pop out his eyes towards the child, and she switched off. She lost the case. I remember writing a very bitter letter to our then Chief Justice. So it is good that later on, that provision was changed. Now, with a proactive constitution and a litany of legislative measures, we still have cases whereby SGPV victims in Kenya also say they are shortchanged when it comes to delivery of justice to them. And this is because we face quite a number of challenges. And that is why we are assembled here to learn for best practices from our sisters, and so that we can go back home and improve. And may I also proudly say that our chapter in Kenya has been on the forefront in identifying the shortfalls and then running with it to get necessary procedures. The few challenges that we have is we have the late reporting of cases when the evidence is lost, legal illiteracy, people do not know of their rights, and the stigma from the community and for fear of reprisal from the perpetrators. I think our professor took us through that yesterday, but there is no harm in I just highlighting them. Lack of confidence in the judicial system, yes, because so-and-so received no justice, there is no need for me to pursue it. And the cultural norms, we were told yesterday by our professor about widow inheritance. I do not want, but the custom demands, so I have to go with it. And then delays in the prosecution of SGPV cases. This was also mentioned yesterday by our professor. And it is because we do not have specialized courts, but I'm glad to announce that our current Chief Justice has taken a step forward and taken the bull by the horn, as you heard her say yesterday. She's a no joker when it comes to women's rights or children's rights. You cannot stand in her way. She is already putting up measures in place for us to have a specialized courts on this aspect. And some of the factors attributing to the delay in the delivery of justice to SGPV are numerous, but one of them is frequent transfers And I think a policy is likely will be put in place so that this can be mitigated. And then we also have the effects of delay on the victim. There is prolonged psychological trauma, not only onto the victims, but also on the caregivers. And the worst hit are the minor children. Some of them, when they are too young, the memory fades, and so in the end, the case is lost because of not remembering what exactly, and the criminal system relies very much on proof of the case. We also have poor investigations by the police. I think we were given a dose yesterday. They failed to take their responsibility, and failure of the duty bearers to put in place adequate victim protection measures, like halfway houses, where the victims can be removed from the home scenario to safer grounds for them to be able to preserve the evidence and then talk. Now, we are here to work towards a peaceful society. The need for proper tooling of the judicial systems as a form of rationing its proper delivery of justice in SGP cases. We are here because we want to do something for ourselves and for our lives. But without proper tooling, there is no way we can do that. I'm sure if we are properly tooled with the proper trainings, we should be able to deliver justice. But speaking for Kenya, I'm proud of my sisters for going out of their way to make bold pronouncements. As I have mentioned, there are those of us, some who are here. When it comes to protection of SGPV victims' rights, they will go out of their way and give a pronouncement which renders justice not only to the victim, but also sends a warning. The cases are numerous. I think the time does not allow me to go through, but they are in my paper. Then infrastructural developments, as I have said, that it is high time that we advocated for specialized courts to center mainly on the delivery of justice in this. And as I have said, Kenya has taken one step. We have already established one. And I think there are plans on the way to set up more. This will assist us to quicken the process and save on the day. Yeah, and another thing is, you and I, we are here. I do not know if we have been victims of SGPV and stitched our mouths, but it is because our parents empowered us. So I think one of those that we should advocate, besides outside our courtrooms and without our pen or with our pens in our hands, is the empowerment of the girl child. I myself, I was empowered. I used to think my father was too harsh. I go with the number 2, he pulls my ears. Where was I when number 1 was taken? I present him 80 in English. He said, where are the 20? But I didn't know that he was actually empowered me. I have not been a battered woman. So we should advocate for the empowerment of the girl child. With the empowerment of the girl child, there is no way we are going to be victims of inheritance. We are going to be victims of deprived of our proprietary rights. The rest will come out from the discussions. Thank you, my sisters, for giving me a hearing.
Thank you, my lord. Yes. Thank you, my lord, with that wonderful presentation. If you have any questions, I'll request that you write them down, and after Justice Demelo presents, then we can have a question and answer session. I have a few announcements to make before we proceed. But before the announcements, I would like to recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister for Gender and Labor Social Development, Honorable Peace Regis Mutuyo. You're welcome to this conference. Yeah, in a special way, I would also like to recognize the presence of Justice Sister David Batemandi Kaboda. He's one of the male judges who take our cause at his heart. Thank you. I've also been told that we need to have models for the the evening function, models from different countries. So if you're interested in modeling for your country, that outfit that we might not know about, please, you're going to register at our secretariat at the entrance. And the rehearsal will be at 2 p.m. in the tent. And there's also registration going on for the excursion event on Saturday. So you also register at the front desk. Our next presenter, the Wi-Fi, I don't know if you go to the Wi-Fi. The Wi-Fi password is 99800, that is the password, and you put SRM conference. SRM conference, the password is 99800. I would like to welcome our next presenter, Justice Demelo, who is going to present a paper prepared by Justice Agnes Bukuku, a retired High Court judge who joined the judiciary from the Treasury of Tanzania as a treasurer, having climbed the ladders from the Department of the Ministry of Finance. She's an active member of the Tanzania Women Judges Association and also an active member of the International Association of Women Judges. She's also a volunteer to be a panelist on her own accord. She could not make it to Uganda for this conference because of the fear of Ebola. Even after she had booked the flight, she sends her apologies. Please accept them. So I welcome you, my lord, to make the presentation. For any questions that you want to raise, please keep noting them down. We shall have a session for that. Thank you very much. You said you wanted to charge it, eh? Let me use your sanitizer to sanitize the mic. Is it on?
Yes.
Okay. I have to
And let me have
Good morning, my lady justices and worships. Dimelo. I chair the Women Judges Association in Tanzania, and I'm on my way to exit come January after serving my 2 terms of 2 years each. And I'm currently a retired, having attained my 60 years last November 25th. Our retirement age back home is 60, as opposed to many others at 70s, I'm told. Yeah, this paper was prepared by Justice Bukuku. She volunteered on her own accord. She paid for her ticket. We paid for registration online. We booked for the hotel. And the last minute, for fear of Ebola, she declined. We respect her position because we all have our different thinking and beliefs, but because of my leadership role, then I have to take the responsibility to present the paper on her state. I will read it, unfortunately, because I also received it quite late as written, and you will excuse me if it will be beyond your expectation, but I think she did something. On her introductory remarks, she is of the view that it is a fact not disputed that over the last few decades, most of us here, if not all, have heard or have witnessed how sexual gender-based violence, sometimes also referred to as gender-based violence, GBV, has gained international recognition as a grave social and human rights concern in our countries. SBV refers to any act that is perpetrated against a person's will and is based on gender norms and unequal power. This act can take the form of physical, sexual, psychological, mental, and emotional abuse, and specifically, it targets individuals or groups on the basis of their gender and acts as unifying of fundamental characteristics of most forms of violence perpetrated against women and girls. I think the introductory will be beneficial for those who may be hearing about this vice at their first instance. In other words, it's a phenomenon deeply rooted in gender inequality and continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations in the world. It knows no social, economic, or national boundaries. SGBV, as it is, has a greater impact on women and girls, as they are most often the survivors and sufferers of great physical and mental damage than men when victimized. Now, in case of Tanzania, there are types of GBV and their causes. It may be said that there is no hard and fast answer to this, but what can be said is that, according to various researches and surveys conducted by different bodies, such as the Tanzania Media Women Association, TAMWA, Tanzania Women Lawyers Association, TAULA, Tanzania Women Judges Association and Magistrates Association, TAUJA, and UN Women, the World Bank and UNICEF, they all came with the same conclusion that SGBV in Tanzania ranges from sexual violence, physical violence, emotional, psychological, harmful traditional practices such as female genital mutilation, and socio-economic violence. The occurrence and presence of SGBV is normally influenced by factors, all of which are societal based. This reality makes it quite complex, as the cultural norms causing it differs from one society of the community to the other. Apparently, this is why I can admit that there is no clear and common acceptable language of gender-based violence in Tanzania. The main cause or reasons for the existence of GBV, which exist in every society in our world, including Tanzania, can be attributed by the facts such as low level of economic independence and lower earnings amongst women, low level of education, significant age gaps between husbands and wives, traditions and cultures, and in some part of the world, the existence of war, civil unrest in the societies, which contribute to many of the regional variations on the prevalence of the vice. The current situation in Tanzania. In Tanzania, like many other countries, SGBV is still rampant, and according to surveys that have been conducted, the main forms of SGBV in Tanzania include the use of physical violence, such as assaults and beating, lynching, and also killing of women with or without weapons. The other evil is custom, or rather the tradition of female genital mutilation, FGM, for girls and women. This being the most physical and psychological violence against women and children in Tanzania. As for the sexual abuse, the most common in Tanzania is rape and forced unprotected sex by a partner or a spouse. We also have cases of economic abuses whereby most women lack voices in their household in terms of economic or financial rights. As such, most women opt to work for less pay, could not afford to own property, especially land, and also fail to access basic health facilities due to lack of funds for attending health facilities, all this because of poverty. Most women in Tanzania are still seen as subordinates to men, which could be as a result of stereotype in some tribes, hence no need for them to get any form of education. This has created an uneven access to education. I think the president yesterday talked a lot about this, empowering our girls between women and men. And in some tribes, a male child will be favored against a female child when it comes to education. The reason being that educating a girl is a loss in a family, since one day she will eventually get married and leave the family. The scope of the problem of SGBV in Tanzania. According to the World Bank report on assessment of gender-based violence in Tanzania, which report was presented sometimes in this year, 2022, it was revealed that nationally, almost 40% of all women aged between 15 to 49 years have experienced physical violence, while 17% have experienced sexual violence, and 44% have experienced either physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner. This is significantly higher than both the global estimate of the prevalence of the lifetime intimate partner violence, the IPV, among women of ages between 15 to 49 years, which is 27% worldwide and 33% in sub-Saharan region, according to the World Health Organization report, that is Violence Against Women Prevalence Estimate 2018, with reference to Tanzania. According to the reports, almost 30% of girls experience sexual violence before the age of 18. Only 58% of women and girls who have experienced physical or sexual violence seek help. Cultural and traditional practices in Tanzania does fuel the issue linked to female genital mutilation. According to statistics, so far the average prevalence of female genital mutilation among girls and women aged 15 to 49 has declined from 18% in 1996 to 15% in 2013 to 10% from 2016 up to 2022. Much as the statistics may prove so, but this might be likely to be an underestimate of the true prevalence of the practice, as respondents may have been afraid to admit to participating in the practice because this practice in most regions is done to girls of 13 years and above and is done secretly. In Tanzania, 58% of FGM cases ranges from Manyara region, Arusha, Singida, Dodoma, and Mara regions, and less than 1% cases are reported in most parts of Western Tanzania. It is believed that FGM is necessary because girls who do not undergo FGM are considered unclean and unworthy in the society, and that ancestors will punish those who abandon the tradition and put curse on them. As a result, most girls, especially in the rural areas, are socialized to want to undergo FGM to be accepted by their families and communities. It is my humble opinion that with education, sensitization, and intermarriages in Tanzania, this malad will one day disappear. Early childhood marriages is also still a problem in Tanzania and is on higher side. It denies a girl child to pursue education and hence ending up in the cycle of poverty and abuse. According to a study conducted by TDHS in 2017, the drivers and consequences of child marriages, the Ministry of Health, Community Development, Gender, Elderly and Children, as it was then called, confirmed that the prevalence of child marriage remained high in some regions of the countries which are closely linked to FGM. The story is different in the urban areas where men and women marry later than their counterparts in the rural areas with a median age of 23 years and above. Legislative and policy measures taken by government of Tanzania, nationally and internationally. Like other countries in the world, Tanzania, the government has enacted and adopted several instruments and have devised different strategies in order to combat SGBV. To mention a few, some of the laws include, I'll not go into details, the Constitution of the United Republic of Tanzania, 1977, as amended from time to time, and its different articles, the Penal Code, Cap 16, for offenses of morality, rape, attempted rape, and the like. The Love Child Act, we also have this, which has borrowed wholesale the Convention of the Child of the Child Law, 2009, which consolidates the provisions and the protection of rights of children and related matters. There's also in place, and in relation to the Love Child Act, the Love Child Juvenile Court Procedures and Rules, which provide for the legal basis and rules in administration of the juvenile courts. And then we have an old law, which is highly controversial and under pressure at the moment, which is the Law of Marriage Act 1971, as amended. We also have in place a law which is under attack by our male counterparts. It's called the Sexual Offences Special Provisions Act 1998. And as such, good instruments have been put in place in an effort to curb SGBV at global, regional, and national levels, to which Tanzania is a signatory to such instruments. To mention a few, again, I'll skip the details for the sake of time. The United Nations Convention on the CEDAW, the African Union Protocol to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, the UN Declaration on Elimination of Violence Against Women, the SADC Protocol on Gender and Development. All these have been ratified. However, it is encouraging to note that the national response to GBV in Tanzania is anchored in key legal policy and development frameworks, which demonstrates commitment on part of policymakers to end violence against women and children. But apart from the above instruments, we also have in place the national and legal policy framework against GBV. For example, there is in place a National Plan of Action, NPA. It is a multi-sectoral and cross-jurisdictional and organized at the national level and local level. It establishes a National Protection Steering Committee, a National Protection Technical Committee, and thematic working groups to facilitate coordination for the prevention and eradication of GBV against women and children. It also oversees other several policies, strategies, and plans which are in place. In Zanzibar, you might wish to know, because this is our sister island, it's a union matter. The NPA is similarly organized, which committees established at national and district levels, but they also have something called Shehers level. Challenges, legislative. The Constitution, in its Bill of Rights and Duties, does not explicitly address the practical effect on the law on the intended people. It only addresses the letter of the law. Within the Penal Code, it is still silent on the issue of GBV, in that it does not contain a specific provision on that. It just criminalizes marital rape, domestic violence, and notorious customs of FGM, but very narrowly covered. The Love Child Act does not state the legal age of marriage or prohibits child marriages the law of child act states does not state the legal age of marriage or prohibits child marriages and betrothals. The Law of Marriage Act, as it stands, still allows marriages for girls at 15 years old, notwithstanding that in year 2016, the High Court of Tanzania delivered its ruling and declared that a minimum age for girls of 15 years was unconstitutional, and this ruling was subsequently upheld by our Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal, in the year 2019. But as we speak today, the government has yet to effect the changes. And naturally, it's a law now, because after 2019 to this moment, with nothing from the government, we continue to uphold the Court of Appeal decision. And then the law is also silent on wife beating, which is a highly prevalent bad culture practice in our society. It also does not criminalize marital rape. Continued existence of discriminatory laws such as customary law on inheritance and many others fuels the gender-based violence. Action taken by our government. There is a process for reviewing some of the laws, but under the National Policy Guidelines for Health Sector Prevention and Response to Gender-Based Violence, the government articulates the role and responsibility of the Ministry of Health and other stakeholders in planning and implementation of comprehensive gender-based services, violence services. But there are more healthcare providers and social welfare officers who have been trained specifically to handle GBV at regional and district levels. There's also in place our popular 417 gender-based violence desks around the Tanzania police force. It has become so popular and they're doing quite a tremendous good job. We commend them. However, there is this challenge that faces the government as of now, in that criminal charges based on violation of the penal code can be brought by the Republic against the abuser. The first steps usually involves reporting the matter to the authorities, that is the police or village councils. Thereafter, the matter is filed before the normal courts, and since there is no specific law which prohibits GBV in Tanzania, it is still regarded as a normal criminal offenses. Yeah, we also have some problems in non-reporting of the cases, and as we had already shared by different actors yesterday and today from my sister, I think we have a couple of issues like attitudes, norms, behavior that are deep-rooted in our cultures. Gender-based violence in some of the tribes, it is highly accepted, and some women are feeling proud to be victims. But there is also an issue of enforcement of laws, weak investigations, insufficient evidence. But there is also social pressure and corruption within our judicial systems, which makes it unsafe for victims to penetrate. Way forward is to take into account all those plans which have been put in place by our government, earlier mentioned. But we also had recommended as Women Judges Association to have in place a proper specialized family courts. Some of us, few of us had visited Zambia and Ghana. Ghana, are you around? Yes, we were there. They already have a very sophisticated, extremely sophisticated family court. We learned a lot. We've submitted a report to our Chief Justice, and we are yet to get a response so that we can also emulate. The other team went to Zambia. Zambia, are you around? No, they also have come a long way and have in place a very sophisticated family court. So we are yet to have one, God willing. But again, as echoed last afternoon, we need to enhance education, sensitization, public awareness, and I think this time we are going in a different way from the foundation, not from the high levels down there, so that we can all be on board and in one page. Conclusion, it is undisputed fact that within the past year, the government of Tanzania has deliberately decided to increase the numbers of female leaders at different levels in order to bridge the gap that existed. We've seen enormous appointment of judges, of parliamentarians, of government officials, female by nature. And this is, in our belief, a process towards a success to change this pattern. In her thinking, Justice Bukuku is saying that her biggest learning to date is that change in any society is possible if we think boldly, act strategically, and allow data and evidence to guide us. We can create a world where every citizen, especially every child, women, and disadvantaged, vulnerable members of the society are safe, thriving, and empowered. For that matter, it is a considered view that there is need to combine data, political and legal commitments in our countries in order to address this issue and create a most powerful impact for ending this global pandemic that for generations has been seen as inevitable. She also prepared something on sextortion, and I don't think I'll waste time, but we'll share the paper so that you can also know what is happening in Tanzania in that perspective. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, my Lord. Melo. Let's recognize the presence of the Chief Justice of Kenya, Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome. My Lord, you came in when Justice Nambuye had just finished presenting her paper, and we are going to have a plenary session for 15 minutes. I had requested the participants to write down the questions they would like to raise, so this is the time. Yeah, please let us know your question. And for Uganda, I know we are still defining what a sexual-based gender violence case is. Dr. Katia, I know you, my witness on this in the last meeting we had with the UNFPA. Maybe she'll even say more about that. Probably after this conference, we shall have a definition. We welcome questions now. Thank you. Can I have Jackie, please? I don't see microphones on every table. Jackie, can you? My lords, the presenters, you can note the questions. You can note the questions. I brought you some writing pads over there. Just keep noting the questions, and then after we get all of them, then we can start answering them. We can have a moving microphone to reach. Thank you. We have a hand from just our own president. Thank you, my lord.
Okay. Thank you, presenters, for those excellent presentations. In Uganda, this is one area where there's been a lot of innovation to improve justice delivery at both policy level and jurisprudence level, as well as practice, judicial practice. Now, at policy level, we have the session system, special SGBV cases system, where we only focus on these cases. As Flavia, you said, we still have a challenge there. How do we disaggregate these SGBV cases? But what happens is they usually just list the defilement cases, and they're handled, just defilement and rape cases. And one observation I've made during these sessions is that the prisoners, the perpetrators, are very happy to plead guilty. They rush to plead guilty. Yeah? They want to plead guilty. Why? Because they are ashamed. They are ashamed of what they did. And this is also one way of addressing the barriers that we discussed yesterday. One of the barriers, the reluctance of these girls and women to come and testify. Yeah. So we have the plea bargain procedure. This plea bargain procedure enables these people to participate, the perpetrators to participate, even the victims themselves to participate in the whole process. They participate in the justice, in the end product, the sentence that this perpetrator will get. Then at the level of jurisprudence, of course, we now, during the full trial, we can convict even if the victim has not testified, as long as there is cogent evidence. That is now, the jurisprudence. And at the level of practice, we support the victims when they come to court. They encourage them to speak up and share their experiences. Their evidence, without feeling the stigma. We clear the courtroom. So these are some of the innovations in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, my lord. Justice Wolayo. Can we have more questions? Yes, Dr. Katya.
Thank you so much, Your Worship. I would like to start by thanking the lady justices from Kenya and from Tanzania for the brilliant presentations. I really noted down a lot, and I'm happy that a lot of learning is being exchanged at this conference. My name is Katja. I'm the deputy head of the Austrian embassy, but I'm also a lawyer by training, and I've, in my own country, done the first half of the training to become a judge. So I have a special interest in this, but as Austria, we are also funding together with the UN, as Justice Wolayo said, a lot of SGBV-related innovations in Uganda. The issues I'm seeing at the moment that we grapple with in Uganda is the definition of an SGBV case, and I was wondering whether there's any country represented that has an actual definition, because as we know, an offense can one time be an SGBV case and one time not. For example, an assault case, a theft case. It can be an SGBV case or not. So how do we get into these nitty-gritties of the definition? That becomes important when you speak about creating a specialized division or specialized courts. By the way, for TZ, I recently had a meeting with the president of the Zanzibar Law Society, and he told me that there are specialized courts in Zanzibar. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but he said there are UN-funded specialized courts. So maybe that's something we could learn from. So if you have a specialized division, you need to know which cases you're going to bring there. So that's where the definition comes in. And also in Uganda, that's the question we are posing ourselves. Do we need a specialized court, a specialized high court division, or do we need special procedures that should be mainstreamed in the criminal procedures? What is the best way to go about it? So I don't know whether there's any country that has experience with that. I'm looking at the delegation from South Africa, because we're actually planning to go on a study tour to South Africa under the leadership of the principal judge of Uganda to study their system. Then the other question I still had was, how do we deal, and it was mentioned, how do we deal with financial and emotional abuse? Is there any judge here who has handled such a case and who has actually convicted someone because of that? I mean, we always hear of women who have to hand over all their salaries. I recently was in the north of Uganda. A woman was speaking, she was crying that for the last 20 years she has handed over each and every salary to her husband. So how do you deal with such cases? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Katia. Can we have more questions? More questions, please. If we don't have questions now, I could take this chance to call upon Justice Kwenandi Ledaba from South Africa. She has an experience she wanted to share with us. Maybe after my Lord, Justice Kwenandi. As we get more questions, you can keep writing them down, and our presenters can be noting to answer. You're welcome, my Lord.
All right. It's fine. No, it's fine. Yes. Okay, good morning, my ladies and my lord, magistrates and the chair, and protocol observed. I feel humbled to stand before you and to share my experience. Yes, indeed, I'm Kwena Dilidwaba from South Africa. And then, okay, apart from being a justice or any part of the judiciary, I'm a gender-based violence activist. The reason for me to share my experience with you, it is not easy to talk about it, but I feel like you must know that magistrates and judges are also human. They feel pain like you, and they have some experiences. Some experiences are good, and some are bad. And I'm one of those who didn't have a nice ride in life. I had a bad experience when I was very young of age. I was gang raped. And during that time, we did not have that protection from the law, even though it was there. But women were just being women, being marginalized in all spheres of life. And I remember when I was raped, I went to the police station to report, and I was with my friend because I was in boarding school far away from my parents and far away from where I grew up. The place that I was in, it was a new community, and I didn't know anyone except my colleagues and principal and teachers. So it happened that they released us on Friday to go and have some fun and come back. But it happened that it was my birthday. And it is where I was raped at the university by university students. And when I report the case, they told me, yeah, you are supposed to be raped. Look at the way you are dressed. You know, I was so, okay, I was feeling ashamed, and I regretted why I reported the matter. And then I went back to my school, and then I didn't talk about it. I told my friend not to talk about it, and I balled it inside, and I had to learn to deal with it on my own. It was tough, very tough, because there was no supporting structure, and I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I only went to the doctor and explained the situation to the doctor, and then the doctor did what she was supposed to do. But when I began to realize that, you know, I was not the only one who is in this situation, it drove me to do something, to change the situation. I wanted to be a lawyer, but this drove my passion to be even more worse, so that I can be somebody who protects a female and young children. Then I decided to become a prosecutor, but before I became a prosecutor, I became a lawyer. And then after that, I felt like, no, I'm not doing enough, because if I'm a lawyer, I'm representing these criminals. Then I became a prosecutor. Then from there, I felt like I'm not doing enough. And then is where I went to the bench. And in the bench, I'm doing a lot. And I thank God for the opportunity. And gender-based violence is defined by everyone, by the researchers, judicial officers, and it is a global discussion. And gender-based violence in South Africa is prevalent in mainstream and online social media. Women and children are targeted in what is seemingly becoming a prolonged cycle of GBV. Human rights activists and the organization and political leaders, including our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, condemn this violence through various platforms, including the media. And I am part of these various platforms which are making a mark, and we see that something is happening. And our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, yes. Our president, Cyril Ramaphosa, on the 28th of January 2022, signed 3 new GBV laws aimed at strengthening efforts to end GBV in South Africa. And we call them TRIO GBV laws, and are Criminal Law Sexual Offense and Related Matters Amendment Act 13 of 2021, and the Criminal Related Matters Amendment Act 12 of 2021, and Domestic Violence Act 14 of 2021. And this trio of GBV laws are set out to improve protection for women, children, gender and sexual minorities, and provide better access to justice for victims and survivors. Briefly, before I step down, the changes brought by the Criminal Law Sexual Offenses and Related Matters include new offenses of sexual intimidation, and it expands the scope of the National Register for Sex Offenders to include the particulars of all sex offenders against women and children and mentally disabled persons in the registrar book. When you are in the sex registrar book, you will never ever be near people who are vulnerable, and and even where you have to socialize too much with women and children. And it expands the list of people who are to be protected to include other vulnerable people such as women under the age of 25 years who are studying at the university or at school, just like the way I was raped when I was at the university, at school, so that we can be protected. And it also increased to the intellectual disability and people over the age of 60 who are receiving community-based care and support service. And it also increased the period on which sex offenders' particulars must remain in the register book. So the Criminal and Related Matters Amendment Act also made changes. The changes that magistrate courts to provide for the appointment of intermediaries and giving of evidence through intermediaries in proceedings other than criminal proceedings, and giving of evidence through audio-visual link in proceedings with the assistance of intermediaries. This usually happens when the court is in camera and when we are dealing with children, and children need to testify how they were abused. And the Criminal Procedure Act of 1977 further regulates the granting and cancellation of bail, the giving of evidence by audio-visual, and the giving of evidence by witnesses with physical, psychological, or mental disability, and the right of a complainant in a domestic-related offenses to participate in parole proceedings. And now we have also the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 1977, which further regulates sentence in respect of offenses that have been committed and against vulnerable people. And the Superior Court Act 2013 also provide for the appointment of the intermediaries, as I said before. And the Domestic Violence Amendment Bill amends the Domestic Violence Act of 1998 to address practical challenges and gaps in that by including new definitions such as controlling behavior, marital spouse rape, coercive behavior, and repeatedly contacting a person online, monitoring, or any activities without their consent, or disclosing electronic message that is abusive, degrading, offensive, or humiliating, or violates the offense of sexual integrity or dignity of a person. And these are the extents from the domestic violence matters. And the domestic violence matters is also in the Domestic Violence Act 116 of 1998 that include the physical abuse, emotional abuse, and it also includes the harassment, of which we also see it in Harassment Act 17 of 2011. And it provides for the issuing of protection orders without regard to the with regard to the domestic violence and for matters connected with. There are so many things that I can say about domestic violence, but because of time, I can't. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, my Lord Justice Kwenandi. Thank you for sharing that experience. It really takes a lot of guts for someone at her position to come and share with us such a story that has pushed her to serve the people she serves. My Lord Justice Arach, you're welcome. It's okay, my Lord. We're still having questions, but if you don't have any, I would request that our presenters start answering them. Yes. My Lord Namboye.
Thank you very much. I didn't see any question, but we can comment on do we need specialized courts? As I mentioned during my presentation, that specialized courts is what we need, and my sister here from TSET has highlighted the best practices on the bold steps taken by our sisters in Ghana and Malawi. So we need specialized courts. And the Zambia, as I mentioned, our very own here, the Chief Justice, a staunch defender of women's and children's rights, she has taken a step forward, and I think that is the way forward. And now our sister posed a question of financial abuse, whereby a woman who has been working and she's required to hand over her earnings to the husband to decide how much to give her. The cure to this, as I mentioned, is to take the route that our parents took to empower us educationally, and that is why we are here and give testimony. I mentioned I have never been a part-time wife because my father took me to school and he told me no joint accounts and no joint properties. I practiced that, and that is why I'm here. So we should, that is a pointer that we should advocate economic empowerment for the girl child. And we tell them right from the start, I think that is part of our mentorship program. Please don't go in, even if he showers of love and takes you BOC to America to what? No joint account, no joint property. You will never be a part-time wife. Now for our sister who has shared her experience. I laud you for coming out and speaking that we should not be shy. Let's use our experiences for the better. That's proactive steps that you have put in place and you are embarking on is going to help very many. But my advice is, you have disclosed it to us. Do not let us down. We have what we call the curing of historical injustices. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was promulgated in 1948, long before you were born. Please take this petition that states those who refused to give you justice, to prosecute your case, next time we meet, we would like you to come and say, I sued them and they have paid me damages, even if it is popcorn damages, because that was an insult to the woman as a woman. If it had been a man, they would have taken action. So please go that as our petition here. Let that historical injustice be cured. I don't know if I have left anything out. That is what I put down for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Namboye.
Yeah, as said by my sister Roslyn, I think there were no lot of questions. I heard loud from Justice Henrietta of the efforts that are ongoing in Uganda. But again, I was wondering, why are you grappling with the definition? Because the international instruments, many of them, especially the SADA and the like, have defined that, borrow and move on. Katia, you were asking whether there is, you have been told that there is a specialized family court, you say, in Zanzibar? I'm not quite sure, and I'm worried if that is correct, but I'll have to check. And then all said for the financial and emotional abuses from my sister Roslyn. I need not repeat for the sake of saving time. The South African experience, I also commend the boldness and the courage that our Lady Justice had just come out. There was a day I was scolding my daughter for a habit of coming home late after 4. And one day she just told me, "Mom, I've been raped once. And up to date, I haven't even had the courage of asking how." So, Lady Justice, God bless you and keep forging. Thank you.
Thank you, my lords, the panelists. I think our time has run out. I would hand over the mic to Her Worship Jessica Chemeri. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much to the session chair, Your Worship, Flavia Navakoza. Thank you very much to the panelists. Let us appreciate the chair of the session, Her Worship Flavia Navakoza. And a round of applause to the panelists for sharing their experiences. And a bigger round of applause to the judge from South Africa who has shared that compelling story. That is courage. That is courage. And I'm glad that you're able to share that story, and you're doing what you're doing. Yes, so we are running behind time. We have had a bit of a challenge. We had a bit of a challenge with the breakout sessions. We were not able to secure the room for the breakout session on emerging issues in youth and justice. So that means we have 3 sessions before lunch, and that is the emerging issues in youth justice, and a session on disability and mental health, safeguards and challenges in the justice system, and a presentation on strengthening Africa's international obligations on child protection and inter-country adoption. So I'd like to announce that tea is ready. Tea is ready. So what will happen is we shall have a working tea as we try to redeem time. We shall have the next session, which is the emerging issues in youth justice. The session chair is Honorable Kamau Jen, and the panelist is Lady Justice Rebecca City from Ghana. I would like to invite you, and while you're making your way, I would like to invite Justice Eva Luswata to make an announcement about entertainment. You have 2 minutes, Justice Eva. Yes.
Yes, good morning and welcome once again. I've been given 2 minutes, so I'll be very fast. So we have a committee in place, and we have prepared something for you in the next 2 days. We'll have an entertainment tonight. You have been told a little bit about it, but please showcase your traditional wear. Do not restrict yourself to Africa. If you feel, because we know there are people from outside Africa, you might be from Africa and you may want to showcase something from the rest of the world. We have asked you to give us a list from each country. We know who we are. Please give a list to the ladies sitting outside. We need to know who is going to showcase for the different countries. We do not have a lot of time, so we are unable to have too many of you, so maybe not more than 3 from each country should be able to be effective. For the rest, you can wear your fashion wear. We are going to also showcase a bit on Ugandan culture. And then, of course, we will have a culture troupe, and you'll be able to see what kind of entertainment we have in Uganda in that area. On Friday, we shall have an excursion outside Kampala. Some of you may have been to Jinja. We'll be able to see the source of the Nile. And on Saturday, sorry, today is Friday. Today is Thursday. I'm sorry. I've been out of office for a while. Yes, on Friday. On Friday, it will be disco night. I've had many of you that wanted to dance. We have one of the best DJs in the country, so please put on your dancing shoes. It's going to be a formal dinner. Please dress formal dinner, but feel free really, your minis, your whatever you need, whatever you feel like wearing. And then on Saturday is when we go for the excursion. We are hoping to leave the hotel by bus at 8:30. So if you're not living inside the hotel, please come at the hotel reception. We are going to assure you of full security, and our drivers are very experienced drivers. Then we shall go to Jinja, which is about 2 hours outside Kampala. We shall spend the day there. We'll have lunch and come. We should be back in the hotel by 5 p.m. And then you can leave at leisure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my lord. A quick announcement. The protocol team is making arrangements for delegates that will be making a return trip, that is returning home. Please register with Angela from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She's at the desk, at the registration desk at the entrance to give details of your flights for confirmation. And at this juncture, I welcome the session chair. We shall have 20 minutes for the panelists and 15 for plenary. You're welcome.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jane Kamau. I'm a magistrate in Kenya, in a small town called Kajiado. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to be your session chair today for this breakout session 2, Emerging Issues in Youth Justice. I would like to introduce our panelists. Honorable retired Dr. Lady Justice Roslyn Naliaka, Honorable Lady Justice Rebecca Nashome Site. She was a High Court judge for the past 8 years in Ghana, where in a short period of time she rose up the ranks and is an authority in the administration of justice. Aside from serving at that point, she also was in an acting capacity as a chief registrar of land titles in Ghana. She has sat on landmark and interesting cases and given judgment that has had a far-reaching impact on the practice of law in the country of Ghana. She delivered a landmark judgment against the president, His Excellency Nana Addo, where in a 70-page landmark judgment, she ordered the government to stop collecting data of mobile phone subscribers as the president's actions violated and continue to violate the rights of privacy. Kindly welcome her with a hand clap.
Good morning, my ladies, my lords, my worships and honors and judges. It is a privilege to be here to share this time. I just retired in July at the end of the legal year, and one of my ladies in the Supreme Court said to me, she says, Rebecca, when we are going for conferences, you are coming along. So I came along and I was given a paper to present. My outline on emerging issues in juvenile and youth justice. I'll look at a few definitions, and then we'll look at the legal background in terms of law and statutes, and then we'll look at the institutions and look at implementations, emerging issues, the emerging issues, conclusions, and recommendations. The definitions: a child under the Juvenile Act means a person below age of 18 years. A juvenile means a person who is under the age of 18, who is in conflict with the law. And a young person means a person who is 18 years or above 18 years, but under 21 years. Now, the concept of youth justice is that while an adult who offends in what the society considers criminal should be punished when proven guilty, the same cannot be applied to children. The common belief is that children are immature, irrational, easily influenced, and unable to properly evaluate the consequences of their actions. This implies the existence of some diminished responsibility when children commit crimes. Thus, Ghana, like many other countries, have established a fundamentally different system for the correction of children and young adults accused of committing crimes. The current law is based on a correctional as well as a welfare model with the rights of the juvenile in mind. It is the best interest of the child that must always be put first. Now, for laws and statutes, we have a 1992 Constitution, we have the Juvenile Act, we have the Criminal Code Act, we have the Children's Act. The welfare principle, the best interest of the child, shall be paramount in any matter concerning a child. Now, the Juvenile Act provides for the whole procedure. It is to protect the rights of the juvenile, ensure appropriate and individual responses to juvenile offenders, and provide for young offenders and for connected purposes. Let me say right here, one of the things that are coming up is that the law doesn't make room for compensation. And that is a bit worrying for the offended. We have specialized courts, so hearing is not public. Only authorized persons like the police officers, the court officials, a relative, a parent, a legal officer, or the social worker are to be present. Now, if you look, the terminologies, we don't use what we would use in the Criminal Act. So we have hearings instead of trials. We have finding of guilt instead of convicting. We make disposition orders rather than passing sentences. We have custodial orders, which we refer to as detention orders. We have inmates rather than imprisonment. We have detention orders rather than imprisonment. And then we have inmates rather than prisoners. Now, the law provides on how to arrest the juveniles. Who and who must be present when they are being cautioned, when they are coming to court. And one of the aims is diversion. We have various modes of sanctioning the juveniles when they are found guilty. And the purpose is to foster restoration and the welfare of the child. The institutions, we have the police service, we have the Department of Social Welfare, we have the prison service, who take care of the senior correctional centers for males. And we have at least 10 specialized courts for all regions. But this is not enough. We have 275 constituencies. And therefore, we should aim at going at least one specialized courts for every constituency. Now, the Child Act provided for child panels. I want to talk about it now. And it was supposed to be within the districts, the district assemblies, the local authorities. And, you know, it was very informal as a way of correcting the juvenile, the child, the young people within their locality. Unfortunately, this has not worked. Because who is supposed to pay for the sitting allowances of the members of the child panel? The law also provides for legal representation. Most of this is done pro bono by a few lawyers who are child rights activists, but otherwise it's difficult. And then we have the family and the juvenile courts. Now, where we don't have specialized courts, the judges hear the cases in chambers, and they try to arrange it in a way that you have the juvenile and the social worker on one side, and then you have the offended person on one side. And the essence is, as much as possible when they are young, is to prevent eye contact, eye contact where they feel intimidated. Now, implementation. The law is very laudable, but we have issues with implementation. Funding at all levels, especially for the social worker, who has to do the social inquiry report, visit these young juveniles and all that. A lot of them have to use their own monies to do official work, because releases of funds, if you have been in government administration, I say is payable when available. And when the available is not coming, those who have a heart for the work cannot sit, so they spend themselves in it. Then we have the juvenile correctional centers for ages of 12 to 14. And the first point of call is the police. Most of them, maybe a few of them in the city centers have training. But in Accra, for example, there are so many police stations. I had a very bad experience when I was working as the chief registrar of lands, and I went to the ministry's police station. A young girl had come with a parent to report a rape case. We had the DOFSU, what we call your CBJJ section, up on the first floor. And instead of the police directing the woman and the daughter upstairs, the way they started treating the girl, I'm like, what's happening here? Oh, you seduced the man. I said, what? You can't do this. Just send them upstairs. And there were so many people at the police station. You should see how the girl was feeling so embarrassed. So we need training for all police officers all over the country, wherever they are, because they are the first point of call. That when it comes to some of these things, the way they treat the juvenile, it's not good enough. And then the prison officers man the senior correctional centers, and so they treat the juveniles as adult prisoners. strict regime, I don't think that's good enough. The other issue is urbanization and streetism. I'll come to that. Now, on the emerging issues. No, I said better training for police officers, better training for prison officers, provision and equipment for skills and vocational training in the correctional centers, and then incorporate education at the correctional centers into the educational system. We are doing well in some places. We are allowing some of these juveniles to write their WASI exams and their BEC exams, but we have to incorporate it all over so that by the time they come out, at least the basic education they can have. And then improve security at the correctional homes. A few of the juveniles have had opportunity to run away because the security, we don't want them to feel like prisoners, but the smart ones take advantage and then they abscond. And we need special funding and budget in implementing the Juvenile Act. And then pro bono legal, I propose that pro bono legal representation from the Bar Association. We must encourage the private practice people, at least as part of renewing their licenses, to give evidence of 2 or 3 pro bono cases they have done for both the SBVV, VTEX, and the juveniles' children. Now, the emerging issues that are coming, there's a whole new arguments about mental maturity and then the development of chronological age to determine responsibility. A lot of research is going on, and the proposal is that we should try and test the maturity of the children, since they have various levels of development. Some people understand the consequences early, others don't. And we have UK and New Zealand and Canada who are saying that we should consider this when we are passing sentences. But the question remains, how should maturity be measured to influence the sanctions meted out on young people who commit crimes? Prevention. There's a new wave of thinking and proposal to look at prevention by tackling the problem of crime at its roots, especially within the communities, like education, providing proper recreation for them, mentoring, and all those things that will keep their mind focused and prevent them from getting involved in crime. There's also, in Ghana, there's a counseling department within the Ministry of Education, career counseling and all that, and I think that should be extended to the community, especially if we have the child panels working. Rehabilitation also, for those already caught in the juvenile system, to prevent recidivism. Diversion and restorative justice. Conscious effort to channel juveniles away from formal judicial system by using other ways to resolve the problem by non-judicial bodies to avoid the negative effects like stigmatization, reoffending, and giving them a second chance of bettering their lives. Thus, this is provided in section 25(2). The implementation has not been smooth. The Department of Social Welfare must be better equipped and funded to implement diversion, such as community service, supervision, and programs for restorative justice. There must be programs established to rehabilitate the offender, as well as create reconciliation with the victim and the community as a whole. The correctional centers must be equipped to rehabilitate the juvenile with skills in education, and then the revival of the child panels. Other factors which are coming up is the issue of urbanization and streetism. A lot of the juveniles who are caught have left their various villages and towns and have moved into the cities. They are not responsible to anybody. So even when the social worker must must look for a parent or relative to inform them about the arrests for them to be rehabilitated. There is nobody. They are by themselves in the city, sleeping on the streets and doing anything. So it is a big issue in juvenile justice. How do we deal with these juveniles who live on the streets when they are found offending? Then I talked about the issue of compensation. The issue of compensation. The complainant who comes, his goods has been stolen, or he has been harmed in some way. At the end of the trial or the hearing, they are hoping to get compensation. Where the juveniles have parents, after the social worker goes home, looks at their standing and everything, the social worker is able to recommend to the judge that maybe give some fine or compensation that must be made to the family. That's fine. But where they live on the streets and nobody knows their parents, then the complainant is found hanging, and they are really disappointed or offended. In conclusion, the youth are the future of every nation. We need more robust institutions, more funding to implement the Juvenile Justice Act with all the laudable provisions for diversion, correction, and rehabilitation in the best interest of the child. We need more training at all levels for all the institutions involved in juvenile justice system, and the time is now. Wombali Yambo. I'm done.
I pray we give her a better, louder clap. Thank you so much, my lady, for a good paper and good examples from Ghana. We will take questions. If there's someone who has a microphone going round, we'll start from this side. Thank you. Yes. Please stand and tell us your name. Maybe you could assist her with a better microphone.
Good morning. Oh, that's so much better. Good morning. My name is Njeri Thuku. I'm from Kenya. Your Ladyship, thank you. This is a topic that is passionate to me. I have a question. When I was hired as a magistrate in 2009, where I worked, I would visit the facility for children. And I was part of a committee that also went round to look at sentencing for children. So I visited 3 facilities in Kenya. And my experience was they are like mini jails. They have the same structure as a jail facility, even though it's a remand home, even though it's a home where the children are sent so that they can reform. I wanted to hear from you, what is the experience in Ghana? Is it that these facilities where the children are held mirror a prison? Or is it a place that looks like they can sort of feel like they are cared for? In one where I lived, it was so very far from the town, up on a hill, that even for the parents to go and visit them is a tall order. And in that same village town where I worked, when I dealt with a child and I told the child where they were going, the child cried, and my heart broke because at that time I just knew it was in Nairobi. I worked in a place called Kisii, and this was about 365 kilometers away. So when I got to Nairobi, I went to the place where they actually were being held as the way to go back home. And my experience was, it is heartbreaking to think of where, now that I knew where I was sending them, it was heartbreaking. So I wanted to hear from you, what is it like in Ghana? Have you made the steps to ensure that this facility does not mirror a prison? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That side, any other questions? There's a question at the front.
Thank you very much, Justice Rebecca, for this wonderful presentation. My name is Stella Arach. I earn a living at the Supreme Court of Uganda. I listened to you very carefully, but then I was beginning to wonder about these juveniles. Do they spring from somewhere? Don't they have parents? Don't they have family? So can you tell us a bit about Ghana experience? How the parents have kind of abdicated their roles and left now the children on their own because they're busy hustling. In Uganda, they call it hustling. I think the terminology has also gone to Kenya. Parents are hustling all the time. So they leave the kids on their own. There's nobody to guide them. By the time you find them, they're already in trouble with the law. So what is our role as parents? Because I remember growing up in a home with two parents, and they guided me. That's why I am who I am. I could have ended up on the streets. So my sister, can you tell us the experience in Ghana? What are parents doing? When children are on the streets, they're in conflict with the law, they're ending up in correctional centers, they are not being corrected, they come back and they go back to the correctional centers. This is what's happening here in Uganda. I thank you very much.
Thank you, my lady. We'll go to the middle. Who starts at the front? The microphone. Microphones at the. Let's go per row for order. Yes.
Thank you.
A working microphone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Lady Justice, for the presentation. Diversion is one of the mechanisms that we are starting off implementation in Kenya, and would like to learn more about the success and the diversionary programs that are working within the judiciary and among other partners from your jurisdiction. The other thing is you've also mentioned about specialized courts, but I'm just wondering, are there also specialized units within the juvenile justice actors that can also facilitate a child-friendly access to justice mechanism in your jurisdiction? And your proposal for pro bono lawyers engagement, I know that is also one of the things that we continuously engage our Law Society of Kenya to see whether we can give them additional points or